New data released by the Japanese government shows that the nation's wages, adjusted for inflation, have fallen for a full year as pay increases fail to keep up with rising prices. The prolonged erosion of income is raising serious concerns about consumption and the future direction of one of the world's largest economies. Japan's Labour Ministry data shows real wages, or the wages adjusted for price changes, fell again in December last year, extending a losing streak through all of last year. Although the total cash earnings or nominal wages increased around 2.4% year on year, inflation remained strong enough to keep incomes in negative territory. Base salaries climbed roughly 2.2% and the bonus payments also edged higher, but those were insufficient to reverse the year-long slide in inflation-adjusted pay. For the full year, real wages dropped by roughly 1.3% in 2025, marking the fourth consecutive annual decline since inflation began outpacing wage growth after 2022. For families, this means less room to spend. Domestic household consumption, which accounts for more than half of Japan's GDP, has remained weak as consumers prioritize essentials and dip into savings to cope with higher prices. This is a major problem for an economy already struggling with a shrinking population, aging demographics, and decades of slow growth. Despite periodic upticks in activity, underlying demand remains fragile, and economists are warning that Japan's economic recovery is losing momentum. Japanese labor groups are pushing harder for higher wages as households struggle against rising prices. The Japan Federation of Basic Industry Workers Unions has initiated this year's Shunto spring wage talks by demanding a monthly pay hike of 15,000 yen, matching last year's record high claim. Union leaders say this level of increase is necessary to sustain wage growth exceeding inflation, reflecting frustration that real wages have failed to keep up with the cost of living, even as nominal pay rises slowly. The BOJ had also begun to move away from ultra-loose policy by raising its policy rate to 0.75%, the highest in around 30 years. In December 2025, BOJ officials signal a willingness to hike further if conditions warrant. Officials have stressed the need for sustained wage growth to underpin inflation near the target without undermining demand. With real wages still falling, the central bank risks tightening too fast and hurting demand, or moving too slow and allowing inflation to keep eroding incomes. Political pressure is now building on Japan's newly re-elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. After a decisive election win, Takaichi has promised measures to support households and revive consumption, including tax relief and fiscal support. But with Japan's debt already among the highest in the world, any big spending push risks spooking bond markets and clashing with BOJ policies. As real wages continue to slide and consumer spending weakens, Japan's economy is losing momentum, putting the Bank of Japan and the new government under growing pressure to deliver. Artificial intelligence-related layoffs have been making news across the world, but according to a new report by market research firm Forrester, the main drivers of a large number of job cuts are still cost-cutting, corporate restructuring, offshoring, and post-pandemic business corrections. The report says AI automation is frequently cited in public statements by companies when they announce job cuts, even when financial pressure and organizational change are the primary causes. Data from consulting firm Challenger, Gray, and Christmas shows that more than 54,000 layoffs in 2025 were linked to AI in company disclosures. In January alone, Amazon cut around 16,000 jobs after a further 14,000 reductions in October last year. In a memo to staff, Amazon's Senior Vice President for People, Experience and Technology, Beth Galetti, said artificial intelligence was the most transformative technology since the internet and was allowing companies to innovate far more quickly. The Forrester report cites the Amazon layoffs as a case in point where AI is used to justify unrelated job cuts. The report argues companies are exaggerating AI's immediate impact on employment, obscuring corporate accountability and fueling public anxiety about machines replacing workers faster than the evidence currently supports. The report describes the practice as AI washing. It projects that only around 6% of jobs in the US are likely to be fully automated by 2030. Instead, it expects AI to augment about 20% of jobs over the next 5 years, changing how people work rather than replacing them. The report says this makes investment in training and upskilling critical for employers.
Of transparency, I do want to, before I let you go, ask you about a record surge in measles in the United States. South Carolina, for example, is currently reporting 800 cases. It's the worst outbreak since measles was declared eradicated more than 3 decades ago. Is this a consequence of the administration undermining support or advocacy for measles and other vaccines?
I don't believe so. We've advocated for measles vaccines all along. Secretary Kennedy's been at the very front of this movement.
Come on.
No, he is. When the first outbreak happened in Texas, he said, get your vaccines for measles because that's an example of an ailment that you should get vaccinated against. What happened with the core schedule that was released in the beginning of last month was to say, listen, we look at what happened in Europe. In Europe, if you give people 80 different vaccine doses to take, people start.
But I'm specifically talking about measles here. I mean, you talked about RFK Jr., the group Children's Health Defense that he founded and ran up until 3 years ago, posted on X, despite the media's scare tactics, there's no reason to fear measles. Should people fear measles?
Oh, for sure. And we actually are pretty aggressive at CMS. We fund any vaccine you want to take. There will never be a barrier to Americans get access to the measles vaccine. And
as a doctor, your message to people about the measles vaccine
is? Take the vaccine, please. We have a solution for a problem. Not all illnesses are equally dangerous, and not all people are equally susceptible to those illnesses. But measles is one you should get your vaccine.
Dr. Mehmet Oz, thank you so much for being here.
New Jeffrey Epstein files have reignited explosive claims that the convicted pedophile secretly worked as a foreign intelligence asset. Messages from the latest batch of docs reportedly include references to Israel's spy agency Mossad and secret surveillance equipment that was allegedly installed across Epstein's homes. The documents appear to paint a murky picture of Epstein's international contacts and fuel speculation that he gathered compromising information on powerful figures. According to The Times, newly released files include claims from a confidential FBI informant that the billionaire pedo was a co-opted Mossad agent. The FBI report from October 2020 said the source had become convinced that Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent and alleged that the financier had been trained as a spy. The report claimed that Epstein had links to U.S. and allied intelligence circles through his longtime lawyer Alan Dershowitz, citing elite academic and political connections. But Dershowitz dismissed the allegations. Epstein himself appeared anxious about the rumors. In a 2018 email to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, he asked him to make clear that I don't work for Mossad. The files also appeared to show how Epstein had extensive Israeli business and travel interests. These include investments in an Israeli surveillance-linked startup and multiple trips to Tel Aviv dating back decades. Epstein also reportedly ordered staff to install hidden motion-activated cameras in his homes. Emails show Epstein asking his pilot and handyman Larry Wazowski to buy 3 motion-detected hidden cameras that can record. Several of Epstein's victims, including his most prominent accuser Virginia Giuffre, have long claimed that they were secretly filmed. But Epstein denied having hidden cameras. In a 2006 email sent to himself, he said that reports of hidden surveillance were misleading, claiming that cops were aware of the cameras and that they had an innocent explanation.
East Asia, let's now shift our focus to West Asia. For the first time in 37 years, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has skipped a major military event, breaking a 4-decade tradition and stunning political circles in Tehran. On Sunday, Iran held its annual meeting with Air Force commanders. The event marked the 47th anniversary of a key moment in 1979. That was when Iran's Air Force officers pledged loyalty to Ruhollah Khomeini, founder of the Islamic Republic and predecessor to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This year, however, Khamenei was absent, prompting the Armed Forces Chief of Staff to attend in his place. Khamenei's absence came as a surprise as he had never missed the event since 1989, not even at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Iran's supreme leader's no-show fueled fresh security concerns. As reports indicated, Khamenei had shifted to a fortified bunker in Tehran. This comes at a moment of escalating tensions between Iran and the United States, including growing speculation of possible American military action. Tehran is reportedly fearing June 2025-like joint attack by US and Israel that continued for 12 days. Iran's supreme leader had threatened that any US attack would trigger a wider regional conflict. Following this, President Trump warned of severe consequences if Iran refused to negotiate, saying Khamenei should be worried.
Sir, on Iran, the Supreme Leader today said that U.S. attack could spark a regional war. Do you have any response to that, sir?
Why wouldn't he say that? Of course you're going to say that, but we have the biggest, most powerful ships in the world over there, very close, a couple of days, and hopefully we'll make a deal. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had also issued a stark warning, vowing to strike American bases in the region.
In my view, this is very clear. If the U.S. attacks us, it is evident that we don't have the ability and access to attack U.S. territory and therefore have to attack or retaliate to U.S. bases in the region. And unfortunately, U.S. bases are spread all over the region.
As Washington is intensifying military pressure, the two sides had resumed nuclear talks in Oman. The first round took place in Muscat on February 6, with Iran calling it a good start, while insisting it would not abandon its uranium enrichment.
Why have we always insisted on enrichment and continue to do so, even if war is imposed on us? Because nobody is allowed to tell us what we should possess and what we shouldn't. This is based on the no-domination principle. According to the law, we have the right to enrich. It's my own business to use this right or not.
Now, Trump had repeatedly threatened to use force to push Iran into a nuclear deal. The warnings came after the United States strengthened its naval and air presence in the Gulf, deploying the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group. Even Trump's lead Iran negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, had visited the carrier in the Arabian Sea. Iran has been facing one of its most serious waves of protests in recent years. U.S. military buildup unfolded after Tehran's crackdown on nationwide protests that left thousands dead. The whole fiasco began on December 28th when shopkeepers in Tehran went on strike over rising prices, economic stagnation, and the collapse of Iran's currency. But what started as an economic protest has since turned into a broader movement demanding political change. Also, the United States last week issued an urgent travel advisory asking its citizens in Iran to leave the country immediately. This move has sparked speculation about a possible U.S. strike on Tehran amid growing tensions over the nuclear deal. With diplomacy fragile and military pressure rising, Khamenei's absence spoke louder than any speech. His silence left the region watching for Iran's next move.
Hi, this is Navya Bal and you're watching Times XP. After the June war, many thought that Iran would actually slow down. New satellite images now show the opposite. Yes, Iran is rebuilding its missile site faster than ever before, and these are the places that were hit during the 12-day conflict. While analysts say that the workshops and the launch supporters in the areas that are coming back to life within months. This suggests that Iran wants missile ready as soon as possible. And at the same time, big nuclear sites like Natanz, Isfahan and Fordo show only small repairs, most damages look covered for the hidden undergrounds. This tells us something very important. Iran seems to be choosing missiles over showing it opened the nuclear works. Yes, it has an opposite of the danger, but because of the missiles are quick in power, they can be moved fast and can be used as warnings. Iran says its missile program is just for defense only, but the rivals see it as pressure. And this comes while talks linked to Oman are still being discussed. And US President Donald Trump is keeping a strong watch on Iran. Doubts? Well, people are still asking if the talks can survive if the missiles are being rebuilt faster than ever before. So, Iran's top leaders have not slowed down. They say talks do not cover missiles. Well, Israel is watching closely, and Israeli officials fear the rebuild. But Iran is not backing down. Some experts say that this is Iran sending a message, a strong message for Israel and United States. Talks or no talks, Iran wants strength first. And others say Iran is protecting itself after the attacks, but the story can be very, very different. What is clear is the timing. Rebuilding missiles with the nuclear sides stay quiet and it looks planned. It keeps Iran ready without crossing the lines openly. And for Trump, this is a problem that is rebuilding on the global form. If one side feels threatened, the other side is ready to rebuke. Well, world powers are now watching satellite updates closely, and the next move will matter.
Well, the cameras were ready, the diplomats, they were waiting, and the world was watching. But you know what? After that, something unexpected happened. Iran said no. Wait, not behind closed doors, not through a quiet statement, but right in front of the world. Iran's foreign minister made it crystal clear. You're watching Times XP, it's me, Dhriti Yatri. And yes, he will not meet the US team on camera. That's what he said. And this came just days after two countries held their first indirect nuclear talks in Oman. So let's slow this down because this is where the story gets intense. For years, the US and Iran, they have been locked in a very dangerous chess game. A game involving nuclear weapons fears, economic sanctions, shadow wars, and regional power struggles. And Oman, it has often played the role of silent messenger. Basically a neutral ground, a quiet bridge between two bitter rivals. And that's exactly where the latest talks happened. Not face to face though, not friendly, but indirect, careful, fragile. And many hope that this would be the first step towards easing the tension here, but Iran's latest move has just sent a very different signal. Well, let's talk about the message from Tehran that is crystal clear. Iran is willing to talk. Yes, they do, but it will not play diplomacy under American camera. Why? Because mistrust between both the nations, they run deep. That too, very deep. Iran still remembers the US pulling out of the nuclear deal back in 2018 under Donald Trump's administration the very first time. That deal had promised sanction relief in exchange for limits on Iran's nuclear program. But when Washington walked away, sanctions came crushing back. Iran's economy suffered and anger in Tehran, it exploded. Since then, every negotiation has been surrounded by suspicion. And yes, now add another explosive factor to this story, and that factor, ladies and gentlemen, is Israel. Israel has repeatedly warned that it will never allow Iran to build the nuclear weapons. And Tel Aviv has not ruled out military action if diplomacy fails. Well, for Israel, Iran's nuclear program is not just politics. It is seen as an existential threat. And for Iran, on the other hand, Israel is viewed as a hostile force, backed by the United States. And this triangle, Iran, Israel, the US, is one of the most dangerous power equations in global politics today. Now, let's talk about the timing, because timing is everything in geopolitics. Donald Trump's influence still looms large over the US-Iran policy decision. His administration followed a strategy called maximum pressure. Be it heavy sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and constant warning. Iran believes that this particular strategy tried to choke its economy and force the political surrender here. So today, when cameras are involved, Iran fears something else. They fear political optics. They fear public pressure and they fear diplomatic trap. By refusing an on-camera meeting, Iran is sending a signal that we will talk, but on our own terms. But here's where the tension rises. Behind the scenes, back-channel diplomacy, it is still alive. Negotiations are still talking through mediators, messages are still being exchanged. Possible compromises are still being explored here. Yet, public gesture matters in global diplomacy, and Iran's on-camera refusal is being read as a hard-line posture. A reminder basically that negotiations remain fragile and could collapse at any moment from now.